All right. So, something that annoys me almost more than anything else is the fact that whenever we are having conversations here in the US about domestic economic issues, it seems like liberals and many conservatives tend to just want to pretend as if other countries around the world, other developed industrialized nations, simply don't exist, and that we can't possibly make comparisons, whether it's on healthcare or education or infrastructure or whatever the case may be, between countries to maybe learn a lesson in terms of how they are deploying different policies to get better outcomes. And so I got some new data here that was posted by Oxfam in this massive report that they put together that is basically giving us a glimpse in terms of how far behind we in the United States are compared to these other countries. I mean, obviously we are the wealthiest country on the face of the planet, potentially even in world history, and yet these are the results that we are getting right now. So they start off here. They say how the countries rank by three dimensions, and those three dimensions are wage policies, worker protections, and right to organize. So we're going to start off here with these wage policies, and if you look at this map, I mean, you can also get already get a picture in terms of how the United States is doing. Green is good, red is bad. We are deeply in the red here, but they say this dimension includes metrics around minimum wages and unemployment supports, and they say while the U.S. does have a federal minimum wage, it has not been raised in 14 years, leaving millions of families in working poverty. Okay, so 14 years. That was the last time that we raised the minimum wage. Okay, so I mean, we're talking about over a decade at this point of inflation that has taken place, not only, in this recent more inflationary period that has been largely driven due to corporate greed and supply chain breakdowns. Thank you, neoliberalism and all of those things, right? But 14 years. I'm 23 now. That was when I was almost like 10 years old or something. We have not raised the minimum wage to keep pace with inflation and productivity for that matter as well. And I mean, we talked about the data so many different times on this channel. There is not a single county in the entirety of the United States of America where somebody working on minimum wage can afford a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment for themselves and their family to live in without going above the federal government's recommendation for what percentage of your income you should be spending on rent. Okay, so this is a situation that we have here in the wealthiest country on the face of the planet, right? 14 years have not raised the minimum wage, something that Joe Biden promised that he was going to do and apparently got completely stonewalled by the Senate parliamentarian who nobody had ever heard of before a couple of years ago, right? And got torched by members of his own party, Kirsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, the rest of these motherfuckers, right? Who prevented him from raising the minimum wage. Now, he didn't go to war with them. He didn't call them out on their corruption or anything like that. He just allowed it to happen. Okay, so we still didn't even get the measly $15 minimum wage that we should have been getting under Biden. And, that's the reality that we are living in. And this is also at the same time, just to give you a perspective in terms of how popular some of these things are. So here from Polling USA, they say three-fourths of Americans support raising the minimum wage to $20 an hour. $20 an hour. 75% of the country supports that measure, and we could not even get $15 an hour under a Democratic administration. Okay, so again, what does that tell you about our government? Who does our government serve? Okay, who do the Democrats and the Republicans serve in this country? Because it's certainly not people who are working on minimum wage jobs, right? But just to get even more into the nitty-gritty of this, right? So here's the specific polling data here. This is from Data for Progress. Voters strongly support raising the minimum wage to $12, $17, and $20 an hour. Okay, so if you get into all likely voters, I mean, again, it's overwhelmingly positive here. I mean, even for a $20 minimum wage across the board, it is plus 49. Plus 49. There is almost like no poll that you could ask for in the United States of America where there is this much agreement on this. And even Republicans here, down at the bottom, okay, for a $20 minimum wage, not a $12, not a $17, not a $15, $20 minimum wage, which is something that is not even on the table right now as a part of the discussions in terms of economic policy here in the U.S., even Republicans, okay, 31% strongly support this, 29% somewhat support this, and then you have some don't know contingency and then some people who are opposed, but even this is 60% support. Okay, that's plus 22 of Republicans who want the federal minimum wage to be $20 an hour. I mean, how ridiculous is this situation that we cannot even get anywhere remotely close to that, right? We are at like a 1/3 of that amount at this point at $7.25 an hour, which is not a living wage. I mean, it's not something that anybody could reasonably be expected to actually live on. And you actually look at the the list here, right? And so these are the countries that we're talking about here, right? It goes from Australia, you have Chile down here, Colombia down here. You even have like Costa Rica, Mexico, rest of North America, Western European countries, Japan, South Korea, etc., right? So you list together all of these countries, and where is the United States? Oh, we're down here almost at the bottom. Okay, and then if you look at who's directly below us, I mean, Denmark, sure, you could say on wage policies, but you know why they don't have to have a more aggressive federal minimum wage policy? It's because a lot of these countries in Western Europe, they already have such strong union representation that those unions are able to fight for higher wages than whatever a government dictated federal minimum wage would actually allow them to get. And so we move on now to worker protections, which is directly linked to wages, obviously, for so many different reasons. So they say here, this dimension includes policies that mandate paid sick leave. Okay, we are the only country on the face of the planet, okay, virtually the single one of the developed nations around the world who does not have guaranteed paid sick leave, okay, at all. And this was a part of Joe Biden's flagship social spending agenda, the Build Back Better program, right, that he was taunting as his signature achievement that he then get shred into a million pieces by members of his own party. But we're the only country that does not have any of this. I mean, look at this. We're looking at a map of all of these other comparable OECD countries around the world. We are the only country in red, okay? We rank all the way at the bottom for these measures here in terms of worker protections. And then we wonder why we have skyrocketing income and wealth inequality in this country, why literally a handful of people in this country, the billionaire and millionaire class, okay, have more wealth than the bottom, majority of Americans in this country. This is why. It's because we don't have adequate union representation. It's because, we have, decades and decades of neoliberal framework policies since the Reagan administration that have gutted unions, that have tried intentionally to obliterate the power of unions and workers' rights, okay, while we have deregulated these industries, while we have allowed the further monopolization of these industries, okay, and so this is the result that we are going to get. Worker protections all the way sliding at the bottom, and then we turn around and we wonder why we have some of the worst wealth inequality in the world. Again, rights to organize. They say this dimension includes the rights to organize, strike, and bargain collectively. The U.S. ranks near the bottom and is the only country lacking any protections from retaliation. So we have covered this on this channel, right? Whether it's Amazon workers, whether it's Starbucks workers, whether it's that recent Supreme Court decision where they allowed this concrete company to sue their workers because they felt like they made their strike, too damaging to the company economically, which is the entire point of a strike anyways. But this is the country that we live in, right? We have a Congress, we have a Supreme Court, we have an executive branch that are fully beholden to the capitalist class, that are fully beholden to the interests of corporate America and the billionaire class. And so these are the kinds of results that we are going to get. They are going to attack unions in whatever way, shape, and form that they can possibly get. We have Joe Biden, who appointed an NLRB head who was marginally better than many other presidents throughout modern American history, and so I've given him props for that. But it's not as if like we've expanded workers' rights in this country, right? We just kind of have like an executive branch that is slightly less hostile towards workers organizing for actual better benefits, better wages, better working conditions, etc. So this is like it's not as bad as it could have been, but we're still nowhere even close to getting to where we need to be, right? This is the same Joe Biden who was running on the PRO Act, for example, to actually dramatically increase the rights of workers to organize and go on strike in this country. He's just completely abandoned that. I haven't heard him mention that a single time since he became the president of the United States. Same with things like the public option. And so, I mean, this is the reality that we're living in here. I mean, you look at the United States, rankings and scores. Rankings from number 1 at the top to number 38 at the bottom, and scores from 0 to 100. So, I mean, you look at these individually, right? Wage policies, we are number 36 out of 38, okay? Worker protections, we are at number 38 out of 38. Rights to organize, we are at 32 out of 38. And again, I mean, it's not like we're just some random country, right? We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and that wealth is not being evenly or even remotely close to evenly distributed around our population. We have, defense industry contractors who are getting filthy rich off of endless war and bloodshed and the killing of innocent men, women, and children overseas. We have billionaires who are profiting profiting off of things like data collection and, fossil fuels that are destroying the planet as we speak. Okay, we have so many different examples of wealth that is being generated in this country, but it is not being generated for the good of the people, for the good of the planet, right? And that is because we have this inherently authoritarian economic structure that is the capitalist system, where you have a handful of, top executives or shareholders or the CEO who sit at the top of these companies, and they have to make decisions that are best for their profit margins at the expense of everything else. We have a system where the vast majority of people who are actual workers, the working class, the people who work for a wage for a living, have absolutely no say whatsoever in their day-to-day life. And these are some of the consequences of that. And so again, step number one would be trying to dramatically expand the power and influence that labor collectively is able to have in this country, whether it's things like the PRO Act, whether it's just basic, other policies that we could have, like paid maternity leave, paid sick leave, other policies that are actually geared towards assisting families and uplifting people who are on the bottom rung of the ladder. But instead, we don't have that. We have a President Joe Biden who is basically celebrating the idea that in this recent debt ceiling negotiations, even though the debt ceiling shouldn't really exist in the first place, that he didn't allow Social Security and Medicare to get thrown in flames. Okay, that's the big accomplishment recently of the Joe Biden administration. So all of this is completely ridiculous. We have the resources, we have the wealth in this country. We are just not allocating them in a way that is even remotely reasonable by virtually anybody's standards. And again, according to the polling you just saw there, just in terms of the minimum wage, this is something that is supported by Democrats, by independents, by Republicans as well. A lot of these economic policies that actually materially uplift the working class in this country are wildly popular, but we can't achieve those things because we have effectively legalized corruption and bribery within this country.
Everyone is saying good Politic guy has the best politics. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying